in the Gospel of Luke as he begins his turn from his ministry around the Sea of Galilee toward Jerusalem. As in the other Gospels, he takes the straightest route from Galilee the hostile territory of the Samaritans. The Samaritans shared a common ancestry with the Israelites, but were considered by them to be deeply inferior for religious reasons. As Jesus enters a village which existed on the borderlands between these two territories, he's approached by 10 people who have some kind of skin disease. We don't know what it was. Distance from him, perhaps out of respect, perhaps because they were contagious, perhaps because they were seen as unclean and didn't want to ritually contaminate him. Expected for neighbors from Samaria. Jesus, they call. Master, they say. Translated in today's they plead. What this story reveals about the reach of Jesus' teachings and messages is startling. These men who are far from his own people have not only heard of him and using his name, but are honoring him with their speech and their hope that he might be able to help them. Something unexpected. He tells them to go show themselves to the priests, the holy men. Now, if these people were Jewish, that would have been following the social expectation. Tells us high priests serving in the temple were the ones who would have held the role and the ability to ritually cleanse these 10 men, who could set them right in the community. But if these men were Samaritans, but indeed. See, Samaritans didn't worship in Jewish temples even more than we would expect to attend a Friday evening prayer service at the local mosque. So Samaritans were much on, not the gods, the people, on hillsides in the open air. For a Samaritan to travel to the temple for this cleansing might we know from the text that at least one of them was Samaritan, and it would be odd if they were traveling in a mixed group, but I suppose it's possible. But we are told that they all agree in hopes of receiving this ritual purification. And then something happens which can easily be missed in our read of the text. They don't actually arrive to the temple. The text says, as they were on their way, they were healed. Perhaps Jesus regretted making them take yet another step, one of possible debasement for the Samaritan. Willingness to submit to Jesus' instruction and follow them was enough, and Jesus healed them on their way, or perhaps some other thing that we don't know. But you can imagine the road, isolated from their wider community, risking possible humiliation, transgressing possible ethnic and religious boundaries. They find their skin condition down the road, they find that their issue has resolved. I just imagine them looking at their hands and then patting their skin in disbelief, and then looking at the other healed sores and clear skin, and then whooping and hollering and prancing around on that road. Relieved they didn't have to betray everything their community stood for, raced home to their family and community to rejoice with them, to be joined to them again. That is an understandable response. But that is not what one of them does. One who we are specifically told is Samaritan, he doesn't immediately return to his community. Instead, he does an about face on the road, and he heads He praises God with a loud voice. He acknowledges the source of life who has transformed his life. At the feet of Jesus, thanks him. After pointing out that the Samaritan, this foreigner, was the only one to return once healed, stand up and be on your way. Your trust in me has healed you. This is confusing. Didn't we all just hear a story about how the man was healed? How was this healing different than the other way that they were all healed? Looking at some of the other translations of the Bible is helpful here. In another, your faith has saved you. The King James Version, which I don't think you've ever heard me say this before, states, your faith hath made you whole. Whole. There's a difference, it seems. Skin ailment on the way to the temple, and the wholeness that has been restored to this Samaritan. Upon finding himself healed of his malady, he took a moment to acknowledge seems to have brought him a different level of healing. This pause, this gratitude, this expression has made him whole. I would guess that many of us have had a similar experience. And we might remember now how that moment felt. A time when you were facing terrible news or a likely difficult outcome, where you were holding your breath as some news, or you picked up the phone with great trepidation. A moment where you saw your life unfolding a certain way, a way that was probably going to bring with and then it didn't. And in that moment immediately after, in that pause of what could have been to what will actually be, of overwhelming gratitude. Our bodies flood with thanksgiving energy so much that it feels like we might just burst with goodness and joy. Life-altering gifts, or it can also happen with the smaller stuff. We can feel it sometimes when we stop before we eat, overwhelmed food placed before us, which will nourish our bodies. We can feel it when we pause in awe to take in the color of the sunset, the way that water streams off a seal's head when it pops up to check us out. The miracle of making baskets that are 4,500 years old. When we offer witness to the miracle of I have found you in the story again, she says. Is there another word for divine? In that moment of awe and space for something to change inside of us. That pause allows us to recognize that we are not responsible for the meal in front of gifts that have fallen into our lap. That pause helps us remember that while we may have been the one to cook the meal or take ourselves to the beach to watch the sunset or to come to church, we are not the authors of this glorious world. We simply get to receive it as a gift. An unimaginable, that moment, that pause is holy. That moment makes room for the divine. Us whole. Each Sunday, our worship service offers a moment for that holy pause of this world and respond with thanksgiving, and that moment is a time of offering. The time of offering is not just a convenient time to collect the gifts that help sustain the work of this church. If it was, we wouldn't newsletter or put a deposit box in the narthex as you walk in. Our moment of offering is a time of worship. It's one that invites us to fully pause. That same one that returned the Samaritan to Jesus' feet. That same one that we experience when we put the phone down after getting good news. Over the evergreens from our window. It invites us each week to intentionally fixed ourselves, built ourselves, but instead we have nothing but our awe and our gratitude at the mystery that we get to live. Moment when we see the miracle that is our lives, when we pause and throw up our hands and can only say thank you, thank you, thank you. That is wholeness enters our lives. It's a moment when we are healed. As you consider your gifts to the church during the stewardship season to sustain our work, as an extension of that holy moment of offering. There are so many reasons to give to this church, so many logical reasons to pledge and to support what we're doing here. One, giving is a response that acknowledges the goodness, the overwhelming goodness of your life. Sharing your resources, that your life is a miracle, and that the only response is thanksgiving and praise. All of the people in our story were healed without really doing anything other than a willing. But there was only one who was made whole, the one who paused in gratitude and glory to honor what had happened. May we follow the Samaritan